This week was all about Erin Patterson as the accused triple murderer took to the stand and gave evidence. I'm joined by veteran crime reporter Anthony Dowsley to unpack it all. I'm Brooke Grebert-Craig, and this is The Mushroom Cook. Hi Dows, welcome back. We've just got to the end of week 6.
And what a week it was, Brooke. It was quite an amazing week of evidence. When she was called, that Erin Patterson was testifying in her own defence. Erin Patterson has pleaded not guilty to the murder of 3 people, Don and Gail Patterson and Gail's sister, Heather Wilkinson. She has also pleaded not guilty to the attempted murder of Ian Wilkinson, Heather's husband. Ian Wilkinson is the sole surviving guest of the lunch.
Yes, so Erin took the stand on Monday. She was only on there for about 40 minutes and then she continued her testimony on Tuesday. And this is when her barrister, Colin Mandy SC, began to ask her questions.
And he took her through almost every aspect of her adult life and a little bit into her childhood in the best part of 5 days so far of a life that had good, some bad and some sad stuff. So we really heard at first about the relationship that blossomed with Simon Patterson, her now estranged husband, from, as we had heard previously, the meeting at a council called Monash City Council in Waverley, I guess it's the centre point of where that council is, and how she was working for the RSPCA at the time and he was an engineer there. And one of the striking bits I thought of that first bit of evidence was how she was direct in her evidence. And she said, I thought it was kind of interesting. She said, I was a fundamentalist atheist and he was the Christian, and she was trying to convert him to atheism, but she ended up becoming a Christian. So she had a religious awakening of sorts, and she went through that. A church service which one of the people that has been in this trial, Ian Wilkinson, he was the pastor, he was giving the sermon. It was interesting to hear her life in her own voice over the past few days, and that's going to continue into next week. But we got an oversight of a lot of the evidence that we've heard. She was able to answer or give answers to questions about meeting Simon Patterson, their life together, having children, having self-doubts, weight issues, about her health issues in general, about her fears, even about her childhood and being weighed by her mother on a weekly basis. We got into a lot of stuff.
Can we talk more about that, Dowles? In court this week, Erin said that she had plans to have a gastric bypass.
That was all about the low self-esteem she talked about while she was giving evidence. She said that she'd planned to have gastric bypass surgery in the coming weeks or months, and she didn't want to tell anybody about it. That's what her evidence was. So if we go to what they call her evidence in chief, that's when her barrister, Colin Mandy, is questioning her. Miss Patterson admits that she misled her lunch guests when she told them that she might need upcoming treatment for ovarian cancer to hide the fact that she was planning to have gastric bypass surgery. So she has conceded she has never been diagnosed with any type of cancer. But this was her story, that she had lied to her guests about cancer.
Another point that Erin made in court this week is that she said after she ate the meal on July 29, 2023, she had a few pieces of cake and then she went and bought it back up. Can you speak more about that, Dowles?
So again, this is part of the sad food-related story that Erin Patterson has spoken about at length in her evidence. She has said from the outset she has a very poor relationship with food, dating back to her childhood, that this has manifested itself as she has approached middle age and in middle age, that She eats all the food she can get her hands on. She binge eats. And after the meal, of which Erin says she only ate between about a third and 2/3 of the meal, she says that afterwards she ate a piece of cake. There was an orange cake that was brought by one of the guests. She says that she had one slice and then another and then another. She ate most of the cake that was left. And she said she felt sick afterwards because she'd overeaten and that she brought it back up and then she felt a little bit better. But as the hours wore on, she said she started to feel sick again and she began to have diarrhea.
Let's go back to when Erin and Simon married in 2007.
So this was kind of a good part of her life as well as a little bit of a sad part of her life in some ways as a listener. She'd met someone she wanted to spend the rest of her life with, that she would have children with. She said that she was walked down the aisle by one of Simon's relatives, Dave, and that her parents couldn't attend the wedding because she simply said that her parents were in Russia on a train, and that's all we heard about that. In her evidence, she went on to say that, she went on a trip of Australia with Simon at the start of their marriage. They ended up in Western Australia. While Erin was talking about the travel that they had, she also talked about another part of her life, which was giving birth to her first child. And she said it was a traumatic experience because while she was having a long labour, she said that the doctors lost her son's or soon-to-be-born son's heartbeat during the birth and they had to go to an emergency C-section. And she said that it was very traumatic for her. She ended up going back to Perth and there was a minor separation at some point later between her and Simon, and that was the first separation between them. But she remembers, her parents-in-law, Don and Gail, coming over and Gail being extremely good at giving her advice about being a mother and telling her to enjoy this time, and she was really comforted by her.
Let's move on to the lunch on July 29. In her evidence, Erin said that she accepted that death cap mushrooms were in the meal.
She has. She's accepted that the death cap mushrooms must have made their way into the beef Wellington that was consumed on the day, and that furthermore, she said she had fears after people became sick that somehow some mushrooms that she had foraged had been mixed up with other mushrooms that she had in her pantry in a container.
And Erin spoke more about the preparation behind the beef Wellington dish. She said that she found the recipe in a recipe Tin Eats book, and she said that she couldn't find a log of meat, so instead she decided to buy steaks instead.
I'm not much of a cook, Brooke, and this evidence went on for a bit about all the preparation, the buying of the food, the preparation of the food, and the cooking of it, and how it was quite a complicated dish. She said that it was a dish that she wanted to make because her mother had made it on special occasions, beef Wellington that is, and that she even went online to ask questions of her friendship group online about how to cook it, and she went to a lot of trouble in preparing this. And yes, it was from that recipe Tin Eats that she'd got the recipe, and we heard about that in quite a lot of detail. We also heard in Erin's testimony that she made 6 dishes. There were 6 individual beef Wellingtons that were cooked, and there was only 4 guests and Erin herself. So there was someone missing, and that was Simon Patterson, her estranged husband, who had pulled out of coming to the lunch the day before it was served. Now, Erin Patterson said she was disappointed about this. There was some text messages between them. And she talked about the expense that she'd gone to and the trouble that she'd gone to. but he didn't make it to that lunch. And, Erin was asked about what her and her guests talked about during this lunch. They all arrived pretty much on time, she said, on that day, on the July 29th, 2023. And she said that after they arrived, there's a little bit of chit-chat. It was something to do with the landscape. She'd had her garden landscaped and they were looking at that, and they went inside. I think she said it was at that point that sisters Gail and Heather went into the pantry. Erin thought it was a bit messy. That's why she said she was a little bit funny about it, but they came out and they talked about that. And she said that during this lunch, they talked about their lives and what they were up to. They talked about a little bit of politics and current affairs. They talked about the kids, her kids, obviously. And they talked about, in the end, cancer.
So after the lunch guests were admitted to hospital, Erin had a realisation that her meal that she cooked may have been responsible for their illness.
So Erin has to go to hospital herself. And we've been taken through a lot of evidence about how she first presented at Leongatha Hospital. She left there quickly and then she returned more than an hour later. And then she's off to Monash Hospital in Melbourne, in Clayton. And it was there that she's, coming under a lot of questions, where do the mushrooms come from, all these types of questions that health authorities and police and, she's starting to hear from child protection as well because her children are in hospital. And she starts to wonder, especially after her husband, Simon, comes in to see her and basically accuses her of poisoning his parents with the dehydrator. And she says in her evidence that she wondered whether that had happened and whether the mushrooms had become mixed up. And after leaving the hospital, she says she goes back to Leongatha, gets the dehydrator and dumps it at the tip. Now, the dehydrator has been one of the many focal points of this trial. We've heard a lot of evidence about it. And Erin Patterson accepts that she dumped the dehydrator because she feared that there would be death cap mushroom traces in it. And she says that when she goes to a police record of interview, when the police ask her to come in to be questioned, that she lied about ever owning a dehydrator to them. It was a knee-jerk reaction, she said. She started lying because she didn't want to be in trouble. And one of the things that we should remember is that Erin Patterson also denied that she was a forager in her police record of interview. And this is something where her story has since changed. She says that she has been a forager and she's been taken to some of that evidence, and that she lied about it because of the situation she was in. The defence's case in this trial is that this was a terrible accident, that there is no intent from Erin Patterson to kill her in-laws or her extended family, that this has been an awful accident that has taken 3 lives and almost took the life of one other person.
So Erin said that she became interested in foraging during the COVID lockdowns in Victoria. She said that she went on walks with her children in the Kurrambara area, and it was then when she became interested in fungi. Can you tell us a bit more about this, Dows?
The interest was almost a passion of hers. She knew the colours of different mushrooms and she could describe the different types. She said some of it began when her dog began eating a mushroom in her front yard in Kurrambara, where she lived for many years. But I can also say in her evidence, she said where she didn't forage for mushrooms, and that was in the Loch and Outram area, where there had been posts that the deadly death cap mushrooms had been growing. So at the end of Erin Patterson's examination in chief, which is basically her barrister asking her the first round of questions finished on Thursday. And Brooke and I can give you the sort of question and answer that he finished on. Colin Mandy asks, have you ever intentionally picked death cap mushrooms?
Erin replied no.
Did you intentionally include death cap mushrooms in the beef Wellingtons you prepared on 29 July?
Erin again replied no.
Did you intend to kill or cause really serious injury to Donald Patterson by serving that meal?
She replied, no, I didn't.
Did you intend to harm him in any way?
No.
Did you intend to kill or cause really serious injury to Gail Patterson by serving that meal?
Again, she replied, no.
Did you intend to cause her any harm at all?
No.
Did you intend to kill or cause really serious injury to Heather Wilkinson by serving that meal?
Erin replied, no, I didn't.
And did you intend to cause her any harm at all?
No.
And did you intend to kill Ian Wilkinson by serving that meal?
No, I didn't.
Did you intend to cause him any harm at all?
And again, Erin replied, no, I didn't.
Of course, then you get to the cross-examination, and that's where Erin Patterson is quizzed at length by Crown Prosecutor Nanette Rogers SC, who asked Ms Patterson about her, in quotes, so-called cancer diagnosis. Dr Rogers suggested Erin had told her lunch guests she had cancer and faced chemotherapy and surgery, but Erin denied telling them that she was diagnosed, and she couldn't recall if she spoke about treatment plans. It goes on, Erin admitted lying in text messages to Gail Patterson about having a biopsy and impending MRI. She agreed the messages gave the impression she was seriously ill. Dr Rogers suggested Erin's so-called cancer diagnosis, as she framed it, was concocted to lure guests to the lunch. Dr Rogers put it to Erin that she didn't think she would have to account for this lie because, quote, you thought the lunch guests would die. Erin denied this.
So week 6 is done and tomorrow it's a public holiday in Victoria, so there will be no proceedings held at Latrobe Valley Law Courts. Erin will be back on the stand on Tuesday where she will continue being cross-examined.
Thanks, Brooke.
Thanks, Dows.